Well, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to our latest Gomo demo, our weekly sessions to look at different aspects of Gomo, our Gomo authoring platform. I'm Hugh Edwards from Gomo Learning, and today's subject is about variables and display conditions. So this is a new one in our series. We decided that we'd sort of take a bit of a deeper dive to give you some deeper insights in some of the more advanced techniques in Gomo. So once again, we've had a great response to this. So we'll just give another minute or so before jumping in. But welcome to you all. I can see that we have some existing Gomo customers, so you're very welcome, and also I think some new people as well. So for those who are completely new to these sessions, the idea is that each week we take a specific aspect of Gomo and do a bit of a deep dive in a mini session, so taking about 20 minutes, half an hour. And it's designed both for people who are completely new to Gomo, so you want to explore different aspects of the tool while making your decision about whether Gomo is right for you, but also for our existing customers who maybe want a refresher about certain aspects of Gomo or want to explore techniques that you haven't tried out before. And we hope that variables and display conditions are certainly going to be one of those areas. As ever, please feel free to use the question panel, and you'll see that in your GoToWebinar box. So do just drop comments and questions in there, and I'll try and pick those up as we go along. And just to make sure that we've got the technology working, I'm just going to quickly start sharing my screen. And it looks as if that should be there, but just to check, could you just, you'll see a little hand raise button there. If you could just raise your hand if you can see my screen and hear me. Equally important. That's great. I can see lots of hands going up there. Always important to check just in case something's gone wrong with the platform. Thank you. Okay, so let's get going. So today, what we're going to be looking at is this whole area of variables and display conditions. So this is one of these areas in Gomo which you don't have to use to create great content, great courses with Gomo, but certainly what we see is that it's something, techniques that our power users would use really to take their courses to the next level. So we'll be having a look at exactly what we mean by variables and display conditions. And then I'm going to be putting together an example about how to use those in combination. And specifically, we'll be looking at how to build what we call a job role filter. This is just an example of a general technique where we can get the user to make a choice. We can remember that choice in what we call a variable, and then using these techniques called display conditions, then what the learner sees on any given screen, and even as we'll see, the whole journey through the course can depend on that choice that they make. So it's the same course, but it's actually looking and behaving differently depending on those choices that a learner makes. So quite a powerful technique. As I say, we'll be looking at just a job role filter in this case, but the technique itself is applicable in so many different situations. So let's just move things around on my screen here. So first of all, let's have a look at the notion of variables. So a variable in Gomo is a way to be able to store some information. So in this case, the information that we want to store is somebody's job role. So once we have that stored, we can then use that to do different things within the course. But also variables can be created to sort of begin to record interactions that when you click on a button, as we'll see, you can set a value of a variable, and then you can use what's stored in those variables to make different things happen on the screen. It even gets to the stage that, again, some of our power users as customers sort of use variables and display conditions to create sort of quite complex interactions going beyond these type of interactions available within Gomo itself. So what we're going to do first of all here is to create create an outline course. And so as usual here, I'm going to build a course by clicking on create a new course. So here I can say create a new course. And of course, so those of you really new to Gomo, the whole idea is that Gomo is going to ask us a series of questions just to get us up and running, and then we can change all of that. So here I'm going to just say, let's just had a bit of screen flicker there. So just say job role example. And remember that it's possible to create a single course and make it available in multiple languages in Gomo. We won't go into that today, but look out for another webinar in our weekly demos specifically about that subject. Next thing is just selecting the theme. So remember that the theme is the style template that we're going to apply to the course. So it's going to control the fonts and colors and look and feel of all the buttons and so forth. And I'm just going to take one of the clean and simple ones, tempo, which we could then take and edit. Now this is going to be important in this particular case, because here this is all to do with the structure of the course. So in Gomo, a course consists of top level building blocks that we call topics. In turn, those topics are going to be linked together in different ways, and those topics are going to consist of screens that the learner is going to work to, which relate to the topic. Now, in this particular case, the structure that I want to create is that I want an introduction topic because I want to prompt the learner for them to select their job role, which I then want to store. And then I want to introduce the course. But what we're going to do is to be able to introduce the course and tailor it to the particular job role that the learner has chosen at the beginning. So I'm going to say I want an introduction topic. But actually, I'm not going to have a menu because we're going to have a look at this area of dynamic branching, where we're going to branch out to different topics based on that job role that they've chosen. So here I'm going to say I want an introduction, and I want, here I'm going to say that I want 3 topics because I want a topic about sales, another about support, another about administration, for example, to represent 3 different job functions. And the rest I'll just take the defaults. Obviously, these are the things that can appear in the toolbar. We just make it a single language course here, so I don't need to add a language selection. So I'm just going to take the rest of the defaults, click create. So Gomo's going to look at that structure and it's going to create an outline course for me. So what do we have so far? We've got an introduction here just sitting on its own in the topic, and what you'd normally be able to see, and it might be a bit fuzzy over the GoToWebinar, but normally what you'd see when you run that new course wizard, as we'd say, and you include, you say that you want a menu as well, what you'd actually see is the menu topic and then dots coming out of the menu topic indicating that it's linking to the individual learning topics here. But actually here, these topics at the moment aren't linked anywhere. They're what we call orphan topics there. They're not actually yet part of the flow of the course. The only thing that's linked in at the moment is this introduction topic. And by the way, just a tip here that you might be wondering what that star is, that indicates that this is the launch topic, that's where Gomo is going to go when the course starts. And if you did need to change that to a different topic at any point, you can right click and notice there's that option there to say set as launch topic. But this is telling me that that star's there to be the launch topic, and that's fine because that's where I want to go in. So first of all, let's actually just label these so we know what this is all about. So I'm just going to choose the topic settings, right click and say this is job choice and intro. Again, when you're building to your Gomo courses, it's always a good idea almost to do this like top level storyboarding, just to indicate what you want these different topics to do. It just makes it simpler when we begin to build in the logic and start to build out the structure. And the other thing here is I'm going to say that I want these topics to represent different job roles. It's going to take the learner to the part of this course. Maybe it's about health and safety or some kind of induction for the different types of roles. So again, so here I'm going to label this as my sales topic for the sales role. This is going to be, just right click again, this is going to be, say, for a technical role. And then finally, we'll have this one being for an administration role. If I can actually spell here, administration, there we go. Okay, so again, so this is our top level storyboarding. So the first thing that we're going to do here is say, okay, we've got our rough structure in place, but what I want to do is to create a place where we can store the choice that the learner is going to make about what their job role or job function is. And this is where the variables come in. So here we can see at the top left, you can see it says variables. So what I'm going to do is create a variable for use within this course. So this won't appear in any other course. We're just using it for the logic that we're going to have in this course. At the moment, you can see it says no variables found. But I'm now going to add in a variable here. So I'm going to say create a new variable. And now what I need to do is give it a name. I'm simply going to call it job. And notice here as well, it's just saying that I can use letters, numbers, and underscores and hyphens, but I couldn't have a space in the variable name. So just be aware of that when you create that. Here, I'm not going to give it a default value because that's going to actually be set when we actually choose the job role in the course itself. Now, just a word here about this making the variable persistent. This is actually a really, really useful feature. That what this will do is to persist the value of the variable. By that, what we mean is that when the course is launched from a SCORM compliant learning management system, if the learner chooses to leave the course halfway through, then the state of these variables, in this case, what their job role is that they've selected, I can actually save that back to the LMS so that when the course relaunches from the LMS, it actually pulls back the values there. So in this case, it would know what job role they've already selected. So just be aware of that when you're thinking about how you want your courses to behave. If you are using variables, do you want them still, the values that have been set, still to be available when the learner quits the course and re-enters it again? And also be very aware of that in your testing, because you might be testing the course very nicely just in preview, for example, but then do make sure that you do test it in your LMS and try quitting at different points, because you might be relying on variables set to a particular value, and if you don't make them persistent, they'll just be reset back to their default values when the course is relaunched. But anyway, let's say, yeah, we want to create that. I'm not going to make that persistent at the moment. So I've now got a variable called job ready for me to use to store the job choice. So I'm going to go back to my course structure. Let's go into the first screen here. And of course, we just open up the editor. And so here's my first screen. So again, as good practice, I'm going to just say what this screen is supposed to do. And I'm also here going to add in another screen because I want this to be, say, a welcome screen. So the first thing we're going to do here is just drop in some text here, and here I'm just going to prompt the learner to say, please select your job role. Okay. That's fine, we'll just leave it as body text. Now I need to give the learner a way to choose those, and different ways we could do this, but I'm just going to use buttons. So I'm going to have one button, change the label to say sales as a job role. Let's add another button and say technical. And then we'll also have another button there to say administration or admin. So that would do. So we've got 3 buttons. So the learner needs to click these buttons to make their choice. But at the moment, these buttons don't do anything, because remember, with buttons, we need to attach what we call actions to them. These are triggers which are going to do something. So here in sales, the sales button, I'm going to say, when you click on this button here, go to the actions on the right-hand side. Now, of course, we've got a wide range of actions in here, but the one that we're interested in here today, this is the first time we've really looked at this in these sessions, is to be able to set a variable. And when I click on that, it shows me the list of the variables I have available. We've only got the one here because we've only created one variable, but that's fine. So the first thing that we do is say, okay, the action here is to set the variable job to contain the value sales. So by the time they've clicked that button, then the variable job will store the word sales, which we can then use later on. Also, as a refinement here, we can have multiple actions. What I'm going to say is, well, after you've stored that value sales in the variable, let's also just move on to the next screen, which is the welcome screen. So I just select another action, link to screen, and say just next screen. Let's do the same for the other buttons. So we do the same process for the technical one. So here I can just say set a variable. We're setting the same variable, but we're storing a different value. We're storing the word technical there. And also I'll add in the additional action to link to the screen, next screen. And for completeness, let's do it for the admin one as well. So we're going to say set the variable job to admin. So it's going to store the word admin and also, as before, move on to the next screen. Now, again, one thing to point out here is we're using just one variable for all of these. It's the one variable with storing 3 different values. So even we've got 3 different job roles, I haven't needed to create 3 different variables. One variable, and we're just switching out the values contained in there. Okay, so there we go. That should give us our selection. So the result of them clicking one of these buttons should be that it stores a value in that variable job, but also moves on to the next screen. So on the next screen, on the welcome screen, first thing I'm going to show you is how can you display the value in a variable. So in this case, I'm going to say, just find some text, and I'm going to say, you chose your job role as. And now what I want to do is insert the value of that variable, because by now that variable should contain their choice, either sales or technical or admin. And the way that we display a value contained in a variable is that you can see at the bottom here, it's got the top tip. You can display them in a text area using the following convention. And we use these double curly brackets or double curly parentheses, or however you would choose to describe them, double curly braces. So here I just do 2 of those. And now I insert the name of the variable. In this case, I called it job. Again, this is why it's useful to give your variables meaningful names. And then just close it with 2 curly brackets or braces there. Okay, at the moment it's saying it's an unknown variable. That's because it doesn't have anything stored in it at the moment. But let's just check whether this is doing the right thing yet. So I'm going to go back in my navigator panel to my first screen. I'm going to preview it. And again, here it's having to rebuild it. By the way, we do have the exciting new live preview feature. It's still going through the final stages of testing, but once we have that, then you'll be able to preview your changes directly in the editor. But for now, we hit preview. So here we go. So let's hit sales. Here we go. So now it's saying you chose your job role as sales. If I go back there, I choose technical, job role as technical, and admin. So there we go. So I know that my mechanism, my variable mechanism, and the choices are working. So now I can begin to build on that mechanism. So what I want to do here is on the welcome screen, I now want to welcome the learner to the course, but to explain what the course is about in relation to their job function. So what I'm going to do that is I'm just going to drop in another content block there. And I'm going to drop in some text. In fact, I'm going to drop in 3 pieces of text because I want to have, this is where I put the description of this. This could be intro for salespeople, whatever the text of that would be. So it's going to explain what this course is about from a sales context. This one is going to be the intro for technical people. So for technical. And finally, this is going to be the intro for admin people, for administrators. So this is where obviously we should have more text than that in there, but it's the principle of this that we're trying to show here. Now, of course, here, if I didn't do anything else, then whatever job role you chose, then when you come onto this screen, you would see all 3 pieces of text there. And that's not what we want. We want to show this when they've selected sales, this when they've selected technical, this when they've selected admin. So here what we do is to use display conditions. Now, those of you who've been on previous weekly demos, you would be familiar with display conditions when we've used them for things like screen locking and topic locking through menu buttons having display conditions. So it's going to be the same principle, but this time we're using variable-based display conditions. This is where we really get going. This is the real power of this type of feature in Gomo. So I just highlight my intro for salespeople text. On the right-hand side, all of the assets will have a display condition, so you're not limited to just applying variable-based display conditions to text. You can apply them to anything. So here I'm going to say what we're interested in here is whether we're going to display this or not based on what's contained in a variable. So remember, when you attach a display condition to something, it will only display the thing it's attached to when that condition is met, when it's fulfilled. So here again, we've only got the one there's one variable called job, and we're going to say if the user variable job equals, as in what's contained in it, sales, then show this text. Then we go to the technical text, and of course we do the same thing. We trigger on the user variable and its job. This time it's technical. And again, just make sure, because this is looking at wording, I mean, we could say contains, but here I'm going to say equal, but just make sure we get the spelling right. And finally, for completeness, we do the same here. Use a variable display condition called job, but this time we're triggering it when the variable contains the word admin. Let's just save that, and we'll go back to our preview tab, and I'm just going to reload the preview, just rebuild. And one thing I would recommend here is that if you're working with variables and display conditions to create increasingly complex interactions, then I seem to have an error there. We'll see whether that makes a difference. Then the important thing is to just think through it logically and build it up step by step, as I'm doing here. So here I was checking that the variable itself was actually working by first of all having buttons to select these, then displaying the value contained in the variable, so I know that the variable is working properly. And now I've added in the display condition based on the variable. So that's correct. So that's triggered the sales text intro because I selected sales. And we should find the same if I select admin, intro for admin, and so on. So that's good. We're beginning to customize the screen content based on the role that the learner's chosen. But let's go a step further than that. Let's actually also look at dynamic branching as well. because after this screen, I want the learner to move on, but where they move on to will depend on that choice that they've made, hence the term dynamic branching. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to just add in, say, another layout block. And I'm going to add in 3 buttons here and just drop them all in there. And they're all going to be labeled next because they're all going to look and as if they're exactly the same, but they're going to behave a little differently. So just label those all as next. And also just to neaten it up, I shall right align those. Notice we've got the alignment button there for the buttons. So I've got 3 buttons here. Now, obviously, again, that if I just ran this, and I would end up with 3 buttons on the screen, no matter what role I'd chosen. So just as we did for the text here, I'm going to add in a display condition. So on this one, I only want to show this one if they've selected sales, just as we did with the sales intro text. And I'm going to do the same here. And again, we're just building up the logic, the user variable, that was technical there. And here the display condition is the same thing, user variable job, but again, we're looking for admin. So that's fine. So that in the same way as it took care of those display conditions, took care of the text appearing, it should take care of just showing one button. But we now need to tell Gomo what those buttons are going to do. And this is where the dynamic branching comes in. Because we're going to say, well, if this button is being displayed, that's because they selected the sales role. And where I want to go next with that button is to that sales topic. So here I can say link to screen as the action on the button. And here I just choose the sales topic. Now here, when we link, that if you just select the topic name, it will automatically just link into the first screen in the topic. So you don't have to link into screen 1. In fact, it makes more sense to link to the topic name, because if you move screens around in a topic, it will always go to the first screen rather than somehow jumping into the middle if you've moved the screens around. So we say link to sales. And of course, this button will show when they selected technical. So again, we attach an action. And we say link to screen, and this one is technical. And finally, this one, the action on this is to link to the admin topic, administration role topic. There we go. So that should be fine. So what we're going to do here is I'm just going to save that, and I'm going to close this, because one thing I want to show you here, that if I now refresh what we call the course structure view, this will force Gomo to look at all the links again and to rebuild that structure of the course. And what I'm expecting, yep, that seems to work there. I hope that you can see that over GoToWebinar. We now have those dotted lines there. That's now showing me that we have direct links between this topic and the different topics here. So sales, technical, admin. And that's because we've added those actions onto the buttons. So I can see that we're getting the structure in place. Right, now finally what I'm going to do is, just so we know which of these topics we've ended up in, I'm just going to open up first of all the sales topic and just label it here as saying sales topic on the first screen. Obviously this is where we'd have the sales content relevant to this particular course. Maybe it's induction or health and safety, whatever it might be. And we'll just do one more, we'll do this as technical. So I hope you're all following here. Do feel free to ask questions or comments in the question box as I finish this off here. So this is going to be a technical topic. Okay, so here we go. So that's technical topic. Obviously we do the same for admin, but for now, what we're going to do is let's go and preview the whole course. So just to summarize here, that what we've done here is that we had a topic there where we are prompting the learner for their job role choice, and we're using buttons for them to choose that. And when they click on a button, it's going to store a value in that variable that we created, the variable called job. It remembers that value, and then on the next screen, we're then using the values contained in that variable to show and hide things on the screen using display conditions. So here, let's go back here and let's refresh and let's run this and see how it works. Okay, I think I'm getting that error because I didn't set a default value for that job variable. I'll need to check that out. It looks as if we've got a bit stricter about not leaving values blank there when I created the variable. But let's see whether this still works. So here we have select your job role. So we've got the buttons, and those buttons are going to trigger two actions. The first is to store the value sales in the variable job, and also to move us on to the next screen. So there we go. So it's stored sales. It's triggered the display condition to introduce me to this subject based on the sales role. And now we've just got one next button there. And if I click that there, then it takes me to the sales topic. If I just do a quick refresh on that, we'll just try the technical one, make sure that it's working. And just get rid of those warnings. So we'll do technical. There we go. So it's saying it's technical stored there. We get the intro from a technical perspective. And now we've branched through that topic to the technical topic. So it's actually directing us through the course. So that's why we call it dynamic branching. So I hope you found that useful as maybe as an introduction or refresher to exactly what variables are about. There's a huge amount that you can do, the combination of variables and display conditions. And also in a later session that we'll be looking at this whole area of what's called asset variables. These are sort of variables which are contained within Gomo interactions. So it's things like how you can get at values that somebody's typed into a text input, maybe their name, or how you extract a particular answer that a learner's chosen from a question. So that's what's called asset variables, and it's a bit more of an even more advanced feature there, but again, very, very useful. So look out for that coming along in a future session. And we'll be running another session same time next week. And again, it's a new topic area. We'll be having a look at the whole area of course completion and assessment. So we'll be looking at the logic behind when running from an LMS, when will Gomo mark itself, a Gomo course mark itself as complete? What are the different options for changing the way that completions are triggered, including triggering completions based on assessment? So hope that you'll find that a very useful subject. And we have a question from Sultana. Will we be running some workshops on accessibility? Thanks for the question, Sultana. Yes, really important area that we certainly will be. We're just working on when's the best time to run that. We know this is a very important area in terms of supporting learners with visual, hearing, maybe mobility or cognitive impairments. And Gomo's got lots of great features to help you as learning designers create really accessible content. We're just making a few enhancements at the moment in terms of Gomo's accessibility. So I think that we'll be setting that up probably a few weeks' time when we've made a few more updates to Gomo, so we can share that with you based on some feedback we've had with customers. But we will certainly be running a workshop on accessibility, and really hope that everyone will be able to tune in for that. Well, if you don't have any further questions, I'll just say thank you again for tuning in, and do let us know if you have any questions. You can just go to our website, gomolearning.com. I should mention, that if you're completely new to Gomo and you want to try out Gomo for yourself, then at gomolearning.com, let me just bring this onto screen. Go to gomolearning.com. You can click on free trial to request a trial account, or if you'd like a one-to-one demo, just click on the demo button, or if you have any questions, then click on the contact button there. So thank you very much, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the day wherever you are.